The orbital defense platform above New Athens glowed like a jewel against Earth's atmosphere as Captain Sarah Chen made her final approach. Her small diplomatic vessel, hardly larger than an old Earth shuttle, seemed insignificant against the massive Arcadian warship that loomed nearby. The crystalline spires of the alien vessel caught sunlight in mesmerizing patterns, a beauty that belied its deadly purpose. Final approach vector confirmed, Captain, her co-pilot announced. The Arcadians have granted docking clearance. Sarah's fingers tightened imperceptibly on the controls. After 15 years of interstellar exploration, humanity had finally encountered an advanced civilization. The Arcadian Empire spanned thousands of systems, their technology centuries ahead of Earth's best achievements. This meeting would shape the future of human expansion into the galaxy. Maintain course, she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility. The diplomatic corps had chosen her for this mission, not just for her service record, but for her background in xenoanthropology. Understanding alien cultures was her specialty, though the Arcadians had proven particularly challenging to decipher. The docking procedure went smoothly, almost too smoothly. As Sarah stepped through the airlock, she was met by an honor guard of Arcadian warriors. They towered over her, their iridescent scales shifting colors in the artificial light. Each wore ceremonial armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal, decorated with symbols of rank and achievement. Welcome aboard the Eternal Dawn, human representative. The lead guard's translator processed their clicking speech into crisp English. I am Sub-Commander Valfor. You will follow our protocols precisely. Sarah bowed at exactly the angle her briefing had specified. Not too deep, which would show weakness, but not too shallow, which would signal disrespect. The United Earth government is honored by this audience. The Arcadians led her through corridors that seemed to be grown, rather than built, organic curves blending seamlessly with advanced technology. Sarah cataloged every detail, noting the placement of security systems and the patterns of guard rotations. Old habits from her military days died hard. The audience chamber took her breath away. It stretched upward for what seemed like hundreds of meters, its walls alive with shifting patterns of light. On a raised dais, the Arcadian High Commander sat upon a throne that appeared to be carved from a single massive crystal. You stand before High Commander Zexal, Valfor announced. Speak with care, human. Sarah began her carefully prepared speech, but she had barely finished her first sentence when the High Commander raised a clawed hand. Enough, Zexal's translator crackled. We have studied your species, Captain Chen. Your achievements are modest, your technology primitive, yet you expand rapidly, establishing colonies and systems that could serve the Empire's needs. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't following the expected diplomatic protocol. High Commander, humanity seeks peaceful coexistence. Peace is earned through strength, Zexal interrupted. Your species lacks the necessary qualities to be considered equals. You will submit to imperial authority. Your colonies will serve our needs. This is not a negotiation. Sarah's mind raced. The intelligence briefings had warned of the Arcadians' warrior culture, but this level of direct aggression suggested something worse. With respect, High Commander, humanity will not submit to foreign rule. We propose instead a mutual defense and trade agreement. A sharp sound cut through the chamber, something between a laugh and a hiss. You misunderstand, Captain. This meeting was not called to hear your proposals. It was called to inform you of your species' new status. Resist, and we will demonstrate true strength. The guards' postures shifted subtly, their hands moving closer to weapons. Sarah recognized the signs. This had never been meant to be a diplomatic meeting. It was an ultimatum. Then I must inform you, High Commander, Sarah's voice carried clearly through the vast chamber, that humanity will not bow to threats. We've faced extinction before. We've fought our way up from the mud of our world, survived our own worst impulses, and reached the stars through sheer determination. If you force this conflict, You will learn why every human child knows the story of David and Goliath. The High Commander rose, towering even higher on the dais. You dare threaten the Empire? Guards, escort the human to a detention cell. Perhaps when their colonies begin falling, they will learn wisdom. Sarah's hand slipped into her pocket, pressing a small device that had been cleared as a diplomatic recording tool. In reality, it was broadcasting everything to her ship's eye. The Arcadians' true intentions would be known to Earth within hours. Remember this moment, Sarah said as the guards approached. Remember that we tried peace first. The first guard reached for her arm. Sarah moved with the practiced grace of someone who had spent years in low-gravity combat training. The guard's momentum carried him forward as she sidestepped, sending him stumbling into his companion. "Stop her," Zexhal roared. But Sarah was already moving. She had memorized the path to her ship, mapped every turn. The Arcadians' overconfidence worked in her favor. They hadn't posted additional guards, believing their honor guard sufficient for one small human. Alarms blared as she sprinted through the organic corridors. Behind her, she could hear the thunder of armored feet and angry clicks. Her ship's AI had already begun prep sequences the moment she activated the signal. Sarah reached the airlock just as the first stun blast scorched the wall beside her head. The inner door sealed behind her as she dove through, emergency protocols overriding the Arcadians' control. Her small ship detached from the eternal dawn with a violent shudder. As she strapped into the pilot's seat, the massive Arcadian warship began to turn, its weapon ports glowing with deadly intent. "Plot escape vector," she ordered the AI, "and prepare to broadcast everything we recorded to all Earth frequencies. They need to know what's coming." The stars blurred as her ship's engines pushed to maximum acceleration. The first salvos from the Arcadian vessel lit up space behind her, but their targeting systems hadn't been calibrated for such a small, agile craft. They had underestimated humanity yet again. As her ship prepared for the jump to FTL, Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The Arcadians thought they were dealing with primitive, weak creatures. They would learn, as so many others had throughout human history, that necessity was the mother of invention, and humanity's greatest necessity had always been survival. 3 months after Sarah Chen's escape from the Eternal Dawn, the Arcadian Empire learned their first lesson about humanity. Never assume size equals strength. The Empire had expected a swift conquest of Earth's outer colonies. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. The massive Arcadian dreadnought Sovereign Might drifted powerless through the Procyon system, its crystalline hull intact, but its internal systems completely scrambled by a computer virus that had spread through its neural networks like wildfire. Similar reports came in from across the front, small human ships appearing from nowhere, striking with precision, and vanishing before the Empire's superior forces could respond. In the Imperial Palace on Arcadis Prime, High Commander Zexhal faced the Council of Elders. The chamber's bioluminescent walls pulsed with angry reds and oranges, reflecting the mood of its occupants. "Explain," Elder Kavax demanded, her scales dark with displeasure. "How have these primitives managed to disable our most advanced vessels?" Zexhal's auxiliary breathing vents flared in frustration. "They fight without honor. They refuse direct engagement, instead using digital weapons and hit-and-run tactics. 3 mining outposts have gone dark. The humans don't destroy them. They convert them into traps for our recovery teams." Perhaps, a new voice cut through the chamber. "You should have considered that before attempting to subjugate us." Every Arcadian in the room turned to face the source of those words. Standing in the grand doorway, flanked by 2 shocked guards, was Sarah Chen. She wore a formal United Earth diplomatic uniform, but her posture spoke of military training. "How dare you enter this sacred chamber?" Zexhal rose from his position, bio-augmented muscles tensing. "Guards." "I wouldn't," Sarah said calmly. "I'm here under the right of challenge. Article 47 of your own ancient laws. Any species facing imperial conquest may send a champion to challenge the Empire's finest warrior. Victory means independence. Defeat means submission. The chamber erupted in clicking sounds that Sarah's translator interpreted as laughter. Elder Kovacs leaned forward, her jeweled ceremonial armor catching the light. You would face our champion in ritual combat. I would. Sarah's voice remained steady. Unless, of course, the mighty Arcadian Empire fears to honor its own laws when challenged by a, what did you call us? Primitive species. The laughter stopped. Sarah had struck at the core of Arcadian culture, their pride in their ancient traditions and their confidence in their martial superiority. To refuse would be to admit weakness before the entire council. You know the terms, Elder Kovacs asked, her tone shifting to formal ceremony. Combat to submission or death. No powered armor. No energy weapons. Only blade and body. I know them well. Sarah stepped forward, her movements measured and precise. I also know that if I win, the Empire acknowledges humanity's right to independence and signs a non-aggression pact. Zexhal's translator crackled with barely contained rage. And when you lose, your species submits to imperial rule without further resistance. If I lose, Sarah corrected him, yes. The council members exchanged looks, their secondary eyes blinking in rapid patterns that suggested private communication. Finally, Elder Kovacs raised her ceremonial staff. The challenge is accepted. You will face Grand Marshal Cathor, undefeated in 300 years of ritual combat. Her mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The combat will take place in the lunar arena at the rise of both moons. Do you require time to prepare your affairs? Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm ready now. Though I should warn you, the last person who underestimated humanity's capabilities is still trying to restart his dreadnought. The chamber filled with murmurs as Sarah turned to leave. One of the younger council members leaned toward Elder Kovacs. This is madness. Thor will tear her apart. Perhaps, Kovacs replied, watching Sarah's retreating form. But I begin to understand why these humans have frustrated our forces. They possess a quality I have not seen before, a combination of precision and reckless courage. Most species would never dare such a gambit. In the preparation chamber beneath the lunar arena, Sarah sat in meditation. Her combat suit was simple, black synthetic fiber that allowed maximum mobility while providing basic protection. Beside her lay a single weapon, a monomolecular blade of human manufacture, its edge honed to atomic precision. Through the chamber's crystalline walls, she could hear the gathering crowd above. The Arcadians had turned this into a spectacle, broadcasting it across their empire. They expected to see their champion humble the prideful humans. Sarah intended to show them something very different. Her neural implant pinged softly, indicating a secure connection to the quantum entanglement communicator hidden in her suit. Admiral Wang's voice whispered in her mind. Fleet is in position, Captain. If this goes wrong, it won't, Sarah thought back. But if it does, implement Case Omega. We don't submit, no matter what. The chamber's door crystallized into transparency, revealing an honor guard waiting to escort her to the arena. Sarah stood, checking her blade one final time. The Arcadians thought this challenge was about proving their superiority. They didn't understand that humanity had stopped fighting for pride long ago. They fought for survival. And that made all the difference. The lunar arena blazed with bioluminescent light as Arcadis's twin moons rose over the horizon. Grand Marshal Thor stood in the preparation chamber, his scales shifting through patterns of deep crimson and gold, colors of victory and dominance in Arcadian culture. Attendants applied sacred oils to his natural armor, their movements precise and ritualistic. The human waits in the eastern chamber, his second-in-command reported. She performs no rituals, takes no stimulants. She merely sits. Thor's primary eyes remained fixed on his reflection in the crystalline walls, while his secondary set tracked the messenger. She accepts her death with dignity, at least. Perhaps there is something worthy in these humans after all. The Marshal's enhanced muscle fibers rippled beneath his scales as he tested his range of motion. 3 centuries of genetic optimization and biological augmentation had turned him into the perfect warrior. His record in ritual combat remained unblemished. 273 victories, each more decisive than the last. In the opposite chamber, Sarah Chen continued her breathing exercises. Her neural implant fed her real-time data about her body's conditions: heart rate optimal, adrenaline levels balanced, muscle tension exactly where she wanted it. The Arcadians had screened her for obvious augmentations, but had missed the quantum-scale improvements flowing through her bloodstream. The ancient gongs of Arcadis Prime rang out across the arena. Sarah rose, her movements fluid and economical. As she stepped onto the combat floor, the assembled crowd fell silent. The contrast between the combatants could not have been more stark. Thor's massive, armored form against Sarah's seemingly fragile human frame. Elder Kovacs's voice carried across the arena, amplified by technologies that made the air itself vibrate. The terms of combat have been set and acknowledged. Victory comes through submission or death. No powered weapons, no energy fields. Her jeweled staff struck the ground 3 times. Champions approached the circle of honor. Sarah walked forward, her boots silent on the crystalline floor. Thor moved with the fluid grace of a predator, his claws leaving slight scratches in the arena surface. They stopped at the prescribed distance, close enough that Sarah could smell the sacred oils on Cathor's scales. "I offer you one final chance," Cathor's translator projected. "Submit now, spare yourself the pain of combat, and I shall ensure your species is treated with relative mercy." Sarah's gray eyes met all 4 of Cathor's. "I understand that in your culture, offering mercy to an opponent is considered honorable. In mine, we have a different saying. Victory belongs to those who want it most." Thor's scales rippled with amusement. "And you believe you want victory more than I?" "No," Sarah's voice carried clearly despite its softness. "I just understand something you don't. This isn't about victory. It's about survival. Humanity didn't reach the stars by winning every fight. We got here by refusing to stay down when we lost." The Marshal's secondary eyes blinked in confusion, but before he could respond, Elder Kovacs's staff struck the ground a final time. "Champions, take your positions. Combat begins at the rising note." They retreated to their marks. Cathor drew no weapon. His natural weapons were more than sufficient for most combat. Sarah unsheathed her monomolecular blade, its edge catching the light of the moons. In the silence before combat, Cathor performed a final analysis of his opponent. Her heart rate remained steady, her breathing controlled. No fear scent emanated from her skin, no tremor showed in her hands. Either she was somehow suppressing these natural reactions, or the rising note pierced the air. Thor launched forward with devastating speed, his right arm sweeping in a blow that would incapacitate most opponents instantly. Sarah wasn't there. She had dropped and rolled, her blade tracing a line across the arena floor that gleamed strangely in the bioluminescent light. The Marshal recovered instantly, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to spin and strike again. Sarah deflected the blow with her blade, the impact sending vibrations through both combatants. The crowd's silence deepened as they realized this wasn't going to be the quick victory they had expected. "Interesting," Cathor rumbled as they circled each other. "You've been augmented." "No more than you," Sarah replied, her blade never still, leaving those strange gleaming lines wherever it touched the floor. "Though I suspect we have different definitions of enhancement." Thor struck again, a complex series of attacks that should have overwhelmed any defender. Sarah moved like water, each dodge seeming to flow naturally into the next. She never blocked directly, never met force with force. Where Cathor was power and precision, she was economy and adaptation. The Marshal's secondary eyes noticed a pattern in the gleaming lines Sarah's blade had left. They were forming some kind of. His realization came too late. Sarah touched her blade to the final line, completing a complex geometric pattern across the arena floor. The crystalline surface, engineered to amplify psychic energies for ritual combat, instead amplified the quantum resonance field her blade had been generating. Thor's augmentations, the very enhancements that made him undefeated, suddenly went haywire. His enhanced muscles seized, his neural processors overloaded with contradictory signals. He staggered, trying to compensate, but Sarah was already moving. Her blade touched his throat, its edge breaking just enough scales to draw blood. First blood, in a combat that was supposed to end in death or submission. An impossible technique. Thor managed through the confusion of his misfiring augmentations. How? Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our determination, Sarah said, loud enough for the stunned crowd to hear. It's our ability to adapt, to take rules and expectations, and turn them into advantages. You expected a warrior. I gave you a physicist who knows how to fight. The arena erupted in chaos as the implications became clear. Sarah Chen hadn't just challenged their champion. She had changed the very nature of ritual combat. The silence in the lunar arena shattered as Elder Kovacs rose from her ceremonial seat. This is sacrilege. The human has defiled sacred combat with technology. Sarah kept her blade steady at Thor's throat. I used no powered weapons, no energy fields. Check the combat logs. Everything I did fell within your stated rules. Thor's primary eyes fixed on Sarah, while his secondary set tracked the gathering chaos in the arena. His enhanced muscles still twitched from the quantum interference pattern, but his mind remained sharp. She speaks truth. The human violated no sacred law. Impossible. High Commander Zexal's voice boomed across the arena. The ritual combat circle cannot be corrupted. Not corrupted, Sarah corrected. Understood. Your combat circle amplifies psychic energies for ritual purposes. We simply discovered it could amplify other quantum scale effects as well. Your own technology, used in a way you never considered. The crowd's angry clicks and hisses grew louder, but Thor raised a hand. I yield the combat. The human has drawn first blood and proved her point. His scales shifted to deep blue, a color of revelation. We have underestimated them. Not just their strength, but their understanding. You cannot yield. Zexal thundered. The Empire's honor. The Empire's honor rests on following our own laws. Thor interrupted. The human won fairly, using intelligence where we expected only brute force. The ancient codes say nothing about how victory must be achieved, only that it must be achieved without prohibited weapons. Sarah lowered her blade but remained ready. She had expected this moment of crisis, when Arcadian pride collided with Arcadian tradition. Everything hinged on which would prove stronger. Elder Kovacs's jeweled staff struck the ground, commanding silence. The combat is valid. The human victory stands. Her secondary eyes narrowed at Sarah. Though I suspect we have seen only a fraction of humanity's capabilities. You have, Sarah confirmed, just as we've seen only a fraction of yours. The question is, what do we do with this knowledge? Thor stepped back, his movements still somewhat jerky from the quantum interference. We learned from it. 3 centuries I have fought, believing I understood combat in all its forms. Today I learned that understanding itself can be a weapon. The Council must deliberate, Elder Kovacs announced. The human victory carries implications beyond this arena. But Zexal wasn't finished. With a roar, he leaped from his position in the stands, his ceremonial armor transforming into combat mode. I will not let human trickery destroy centuries of tradition. Sarah's neural implant registered the threat before her conscious mind processed it. She moved on pure instinct, pushing Thor aside as Zexal's energy blade sliced through the space where they had been standing. You dare. Thor's voice carried the weight of centuries of authority. You violate sacred combat with an energy weapon. But Zexal was beyond reason, his augmentations pushing him into a combat frenzy. His next strike came at Sarah with devastating speed. She deflected it with her monomolecular blade, the technologies clashing in a spray of quantum particles. The arena erupted in chaos. Some guards moved to stop Zexal, while others seemed unsure whether to protect their high commander or arrest him for violating sacred law. Sarah danced away from another strike, her blade leaving more quantum interference patterns on the arena floor. "Your own leader breaks your laws," she called out to the crowd, "while a human upholds them. What does that tell you about who truly respects your traditions?" The words hit home. Guard Captain Val Thor, who had once escorted Sarah to her first diplomatic disaster, made his decision. Protect the human champion. The High Commander violates all we hold sacred. Zexal found himself suddenly surrounded by his own guards, their weapons trained on him. His scales flashed crimson with rage. "You side with this primitive against your own commander." "We side with our laws," Thor stated, stepping forward despite his lingering injuries. "The laws that have held our empire together for millennia. Laws that this human has shown more respect for than you." The High Commander's next move would determine the future of two species. His blade hummed with deadly energy as his eyes darted between potential targets. Sarah watched him carefully, recognizing the look of someone about to make a desperate gamble. "Even now, you prove my point," she said softly. "You think strength comes from domination. We learned long ago that true strength comes from adaptation, from understanding when to fight and when to learn from defeat." For a moment, the fate of human-Arcadian relations balanced on a quantum's edge. Zexal's energy blade powered down with a fading hum. The High Commander's scales shifted through colors so rapidly that the translators struggled to interpret the emotional display. Finally, they settled on a deep purple, the color of bitter acceptance. 3,000 years of tradition," he said, his translator crackling with barely contained emotion. "And a human teaches us its true meaning." "Not teaches," Sarah corrected, sheathing her blade. "Reminds. Your ancestors wrote laws based on wisdom and honor. Laws that recognized strength comes in many forms." Elder Kovacs descended from her position, her ceremonial robes flowing like liquid starlight. "The human speaks truth. Our ancient laws were written not to preserve our superiority, but to test it, to ensure we remained worthy of our power." She turned to address the silent crowd. "Today, we failed that test. But in failing, we learned." Thor, his systems finally clearing of the quantum interference, stepped forward. "The Council recognizes the human victory and its implications. By our most sacred laws, humanity has earned its independence, but perhaps they have earned something more valuable as well." Sarah's neural implant pinged softly. Admiral Wong requesting an update. She sent back a brief status signal. "Mission accomplished. Stand down, Case Omega." "The Empire offers alliance," Thor continued, "not dominion. Your species has demonstrated qualities we have forgotten to value. Innovation, adaptation, the wisdom to understand an opponent's strength and turn it to advantage." "And if we accept?" Sarah asked, though she already knew humanity's answer. The possibility of accessing Arcadian technology and knowledge while maintaining independence was exactly what they had hoped for. Elder Kovacs's staff struck the ground one final time. "Then two paths lie before us. Continue as rivals, locked in a conflict that will cost both our species dearly, or forge something new, an alliance that combines Arcadian power with human ingenuity." The choice was clear. Sarah stepped forward, her movements deliberate and formal. "Humanity accepts the offer of alliance, with all rights and responsibilities thereof." As the assembled Arcadians erupted in a chorus of clicking that the translator interpreted as approval, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They had come expecting to witness humanity's submission. Instead, they had seen the birth of a partnership that would reshape the galaxy. Hours later, as her small ship prepared to depart with the Draft Alliance Treaty, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Thor stood in the docking bay, his massive frame somehow less intimidating now. "A question, if I may," he said. "You could have killed me in the arena. Your blade was positioned for a fatal strike. not just a scoring cut. Why didn't you? Sarah considered her answer carefully. Because the goal wasn't to prove humans could kill Arcadians. It was to prove we could understand you better than you understood yourselves. Dead enemies can't become allies. Thor's scales shifted to a color Sarah hadn't seen before, one her translator identified as respectful amusement. You truly are a remarkable species. The Empire thought we were stooping to test humanity's worth. Instead, humanity tested ours. That's the thing about humans, Sarah replied as she prepared to board. We're always testing, always learning, always adapting. It's how we survived on Earth, and it's how we'll thrive among the stars. As her ship broke orbit, Sarah watched the crystalline spires of Arcadis Prime recede into the distance. Humanity had gambled everything on this mission, their independence, their future, perhaps their very survival. They had won not through superior strength or advanced technology, but through their most fundamental trait, the ability to understand, adapt, and turn disadvantage into opportunity. The stars stretched into FTL streams as her ship began its journey home. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, human and Arcadian ships were already standing down from battle positions, preparing instead for a future neither species had imagined possible mere days ago. It wasn't the end of humanity's challenges. There would always be new threats, new mysteries, new boundaries to push. But they had proven once again that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their ships or their technology, or even their determination. It was their ability to change the rules of the game itself.